Hello, my name is Ryan, and welcome to RWBY In-Depth Analysis. This week, I'll be analyzing the second chapter of RWBY, Volume 1, Chapter 2, The Shining Beacon. This chapter, like most of the chapters in Volume 1, was split into two parts for budgetary reasons. I'll be treating both of these still as a single chapter, and covering them in the same episode. For The Shining Beacon, these parts aired first on July 25th and August 1st, 2013, respectively. The chapter opens where we left off, the transport airships arriving at the docks to Beacon. It's a sunny, pleasant day. The music is serene and wondrous, Beacon Academy's leitmotif. The scene is about as idyllic as it can get. Cut to the as-yet unnamed Jean Arc rushing off the ship to vomit. We get a wide shot of a crowd of students disembarking the airship, RWBY and Yang standing out vividly. They both wow in unison as they stare up at Beacon Academy, giving us our first good look at it. In this view, only the courtyard and the hall are rendered in 3D, with the rest of the skyline painted in 2D as silhouettes. Most striking here, of course, is the tower, with the titular shining beacon on top. We learn later that this tower is both Beacon's CCT tower and the office of Headmaster Ozpin. The music is triumphant, letting the audience know that this is a beautiful and impressive place, even if the animation budget isn't enough to do it justice. RWBY immediately gets distracted by the other students, or more specifically, their weapons. In a cute and comedic nod to common anime tropes, something common in RWBY transitions into a 2D chibi art style, representing her single-minded excitement over weapons. She almost wanders off, chasing after another student before Yang drags her back to reality, and the show's standard animation style. Their conversation here, Yang reminding RWBY that they're just weapons, and RWBY explaining why they're not just weapons, is actually extremely thematically important. It explicitly states one of the core pieces of symbolism that the show uses: weapons as an extension of the self. Time and time again, consistently throughout the volumes, weapons are used symbolically to represent the character who owns it. Of course, this also serves to show that RWBY is a socially awkward weapons nerd. Unfortunately for RWBY, Yang abandons her, quickly taking off with her friends, who we can already tell are unimportant based on their lack of a rendered model, and also because they are never mentioned again. This is, in all likelihood, Yang trying to encourage her asocial little sister to spread her wings and make friends, by dropping her into the deep end, so to speak, and leaving her very overwhelmed, something I can relate to. Of course, the first person RWBY runs into is Weiss, whose baggage dolly RWBY falls into, which Weiss takes grave offense to. In part because she, or rather her unnamed butlers, who never appear again, are transporting vials of dust. You can also see an animation mistake here, the floor disappears. With Weiss's first appearance with dialogue, we finally get some more characterization. Characterization that, similarly to RWBY last chapter, is seemingly at odds with her appearance in the White trailer. In the trailer, Weiss is depicted as being at war with a part of herself, lonely, in the spotlight and the center of attention, fighting a monster that shares an emblem with her. Here she comes off as entitled, bitter, and overtly confrontational. This dichotomy is central to Weiss's character and her development over the next 9 volumes. The Weiss we meet here is a shield, the mask she learned to wear to protect herself from her family, to keep herself safe from not just her father and his expectations, but also people looking to take advantage of her and her last name. She had to learn to be aggressive, to never trust anyone and always assume the worst. Her character arc in the first 3 volumes, in the Choice arc, is her choosing to let down those defenses. In berating RWBY, Weiss also helpfully delivers some exposition. That dust is mined from the Schnee Quarry, that dust produces fire, ice, lightning, and energy, and again, reinforcing the idea that it's completely ubiquitous. While berating RWBY, Weiss shakes a vial of dust, launching it into the air. This of course gives us another oft-referenced joke: RWBY sneezing and causing an explosion, with ice and lightning mixed in, again demonstrating dust's elemental properties. It also demonstrates how volatile dust can be, even if for comedic purposes. Thankfully, instead of detonating all of Weiss's dust, it launches the vial conveniently to our final main character, Blake, engrossed in a book, who picks up the vial and looks at the Schnee snowflake on it, then up at Weiss, a very neutral expression on her face. The music picks up again, this time in Weiss's leitmotif, Mirror Mirror. This time, instead of lonely and haunting and emotional like in the White trailer, it's combative, almost unpleasant. Weiss continues to scold RWBY, getting increasingly harsh and personal, and going after her age. At first, RWBY is apologetic, but becomes flustered and then increasingly defensive, even insultingly calling Weiss
Princess.
This, of course, is Blake's cue. She corrects RWBY. Weiss is the heiress to the Schnee Dust Company, the largest dust producer in the world. At first, Weiss is pleased, giving RWBY a sassy look for not knowing who she is, only for Blake to continue, explaining that the SDC is infamous for its controversial labor forces and questionable business partners. Weiss is immediately outraged and flustered, while RWBY is very amused. Notably, however, Weiss does not try and correct Blake or even disagree. She's surprised and flustered and automatically on the defensive, but she agrees. She gets up in Blake's face, takes back the vial of dust, and storms off, her luggage being carried behind her by her unmentioned butlers. The music shifts to a sadder, more despondent version of Mirror Mirror, and RWBY, in her near-infinite compassion, calls out after Weiss to tell her she'll make it up to her. Looking down to the floor gloomily, RWBY again displays her high empathy. Instead of just assuming Weiss is a mean person, or saying something scathing behind her back, she says,
I guess I'm not the only one having a rough first day.
She relates her own troubles to Weiss's, and assumes that Weiss was simply taking out her frustrations on RWBY. Cheering up momentarily, RWBY tries to strike up conversation with Blake, only to find her already strutting away, back to the ship for some reason. In this short first appearance, Blake has reinforced her characterization in the Black trailer. Mysterious, serious, and with a strong moral compass. Of course, we already knew that Blake was opposed to the Schnees from the subtle clues in both their trailers, even if the details weren't yet known. A new aspect of her character now being revealed is how unfriendly she is. Not hostile, but reserved, quiet. She hasn't come here to make friends, and, ironically, is like Weiss in how much of herself she hides. But where Weiss fends off connections by being openly hostile and mean, Blake is simply keeping her distance and trying not to be noticed or approached. It's worth mentioning how unlikely it is that these four girls all attend in the same year and become teammates. The daughters of Ozpin's hand-picked soldiers, one of whom has silver eyes, the daughter of one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the world, and the daughter of a world leader who has ties to a powerful paramilitary group. If anything, these four coming together now is the central crux of the story. Each of these characters would have played important roles in the conflict to come, no matter where they ended up or on what team with who. Blake's ties to the White Fang and Adam would have still come back to haunt her and pull her into Cinder's plot. Weiss's connection to her father and the military would similarly have kept her in the spotlight whenever Salem turns her attention to Atlas. And RWBY and Yang were basically born into the war as well. Any other turn of events would have still seen each of them as important players in the fight against Salem, or at the very least victims of it. The thing that makes each of them special, then, is not who they are or the circumstances of their birth. It is that they have each other. The unlikely meeting of these four, and the bond they grow and develop and share with each other, is what makes the difference. Now alone, RWBY falls onto her back, exhaustedly telling herself welcome to Beacon, dejected and alone. But not for too long. A shadow falls over her, a rare sight this early on, given the low budget. The shadow of the previously seen John Arc. Bashfully, he introduces himself, helping RWBY up, who snorts, recognizing him as the one who threw up on the ship. Continuing through the courtyard, we've rejoined them in the middle of John comedically defending himself, saying that
motion sickness is a much more common problem than people let on,
and threatening to call RWBY
crater face
for exploding Weiss. John here, in his first actual scene, as he has no special main character trailer, comes off as awkward, kind-hearted, and sheltered, making awkward comments about what his mom told him. Nevertheless, he shapes up to be RWBY's first friend at Beacon, not including Yang. John's character design is a mix of knight in shining armor and average teenage boy, white plate over a short-sleeve hoodie and jeans. This early on, John is certainly more of the former than the latter, but he grows into it. After the briefest of lulls in the conversation, RWBY whips out Crescent Rose to show it off, not knowing any other way to connect to people. John is taken off guard, not nearly as familiar with weapons as he should be. This leads to a line that has become basically the tagline of the series.
It's also a gun.
When RWBY asks about Jean's weapon, he produces his comparatively much simpler weapon. A hand-and-a-half or bastard sword, and a collapsible scabbard and heater shield, white with gold trimming and adorned with Jean's emblem, presumably the emblem of his family. Called Crocea Mors, Latin for Yellow Death, and the name of Julius Caesar's mythical sword that became embedded in a shield. As Jean explains that it's collapsible, we get a personal favorite joke that also helps keep the world grounded.
Wouldn't it weigh the same?
Yeah, it does.
Jean also explains that it's a hand-me-down, used by his great-great-grandfather in The War, what we later learn was likely the Great War. RWBY tries lightheartedly joking and reassuring Jean, who's noticeably self-conscious of his weapon and its simplicity, but calling it a classic. Jean doesn't seem entirely convinced. As they continue moving, RWBY asks,
So why'd you help me out back there, in the courtyard?
Why not? My mom always says, strangers are just friends you haven't met yet.
Jean is the show's resident golden retriever. Kind, a little bit oblivious, but not necessarily dumb, and friendly almost to a fault. As previously stated, he is naive and sheltered, relying on his parents' advice in social situations. RWBY and Jean then unceremoniously, and comedically, realize that neither of them know where they're going, and are just following each other. The scene then fades to black as Jean comedically asks how they can find their way around Beacon. A sequence cut short in the DVD version of this chapter, according to the wiki. Also cut from that version is the end credits of this part, which appear over a red and black silhouette of RWBY, with the song I May Fall playing. A beautiful and exciting song about persevering in the darkest moments, and one of the first symbolically relevant expressions of the concept of fallen, a core recurring theme in RWBY, and a song we'll be hearing again later. Moving on to the second part of the chapter, we find RWBY and Jean entering a large, ornate, circular building full of students. The amphitheater, which we see throughout the first 3 volumes, being used for both assemblies like this, as well as sparring class. It lies directly at the end of the main avenue through the courtyard, in front of the tower. The music playing is grand and triumphant. Yang calls out to RWBY, saying she saved her a spot, to stand apparently. This leaves us with the heartwarming implication that, even when trying to let her little sister spread her wings, she is the first thing on her mind. This leaves Jean alone, and pondering,
Where am I supposed to find another nice, quirky girl to talk to?
only to move and reveal Pyrrha. It's worth noting that this joke only works because of the limited animation. The music that plays over this joke is light, peaceful, but slightly melancholic. Forever Fall, Jean and Pyrrha's leitmotif. This scene, and the rest of the assembly to follow, were the first scenes of dialogue animated. Back with RWBY and Yang, we find RWBY peeved with Yang about ditching her, and recounting how poorly her day has been going. At first, Yang thinks RWBY simply had a meltdown and is exaggerating, but when Weiss butts in, with a very funny build-up, and berates RWBY,
You're lucky we weren't blown off the side of the cliff.
Oh my god, you really exploded.
RWBY continues to apologize, with Weiss cutting her off to give her a public relations spiel, with a rather condescending pamphlet to boot, which goes over RWBY's head. Weiss summarizes,
Read this and don't ever speak to me again.
It's interesting how Weiss, in this instance, willingly begins an interaction with RWBY. That is something I think many people fail to notice. Even if it was overtly negative and hostile, Weiss is the one who started this encounter. After spending 17 years stuck with her family, RWBY is probably a breath of fresh air, openly kind and compassionate, but also not beholden to her like Klein, or in a position of power over her like Winter. I don't think Weiss was secretly pining for RWBY or anything. Sorry, shippers. But I do think that, between someone who has already proven to Weiss that she's nice and not out to get her, and a bunch of strangers, Weiss chooses RWBY, even if she really does dislike her or sees her as a child. This is something I'll talk about again next episode, when Weiss and RWBY officially becomes partners. Alternatively, maybe Weiss really is just so angry at RWBY she had to come find her and yell at her again, twice. Yang, helpfully, suggests that they simply got off on the wrong foot, and that they can try to start over and be friends. RWBY jumps on this idea and reintroduces herself, and as soon as she says something childish, Weiss leaps on the opportunity to make fun of her with sarcasm. In doing so, she also gets Jean's attention, who apparently notices her calling him cute, without detecting the sarcasm. From there, we get a brief shot of each of them looking varying degrees of dejected, until Ozpin begins his speech. He opens by stating,
I'll keep this brief.
And true to his words, it is a pretty brief speech to usher in a new year of students. It's also surprisingly negative. Built around the idea that Ozpin sees wasted energy in them, that the students of Beacon cannot rely entirely on the school. They need to work to attain their goals. It's up to you to take the first step. This also supports the core themes of choice in the first 3 volumes. The students have to choose a direction in life. They can't just go with the flow. The end of his speech also name drops the title of the next chapter, The First Step. We get some reaction shots of Yang, RWBY, and Weiss. At first, RWBY and Yang are excited and cheerful, while Weiss is thoughtful, particularly when Ozpin mentions why the students have come here. Weiss, after all, came here to restore her family's honor, and to be out of her father's reach. As his speech continues, Yang and RWBY look a little less eager. Yang in particular looks defensive at the idea that she has wasted energy in need of purpose, direction. In Volume 2, when confronted by Oobleck about why she chose to become a huntress, her first reason is simply to go on adventures and not worry about what the next day would bring. Beneath the confidence and carefree, happy-go-lucky attitude, Yang feels directionless and guilty about that fact, especially in comparison to her little sister, who is extremely driven. This, of course, is tied to her abandonment issues, which I'll talk about more down the road. By the end of the speech, all of them, in particular RWBY, don't seem to know what to make of it. As Ozpin walks away, Glinda takes the mic and directs the freshmen to the ballroom, telling them to be ready for initiation in the morning. Yang and RWBY agree that something is odd about Ozpin, with RWBY stating that
It's almost like he wasn't even there.
this, of course, is direct foreshadowing about Ozpin's true nature. To conclude the scene with a joke, Jean jumps in to obliviously flirt with Weiss, who simply puts her head in her hands. Hard cut to nighttime at Beacon, a rather pretty shot including a full moon, again showing how Remnant's moon rotates in the sky unlike Earth's. The music is soft and peaceful inside the ballroom, as all the students get ready to sleep on the floor in sleeping bags. RWBY, in her pajamas, is focused on writing, before Yang flops down next to her. They briefly joke about how their dad wouldn't approve of them having a slumber party with so many boys, which I only mention because people occasionally use this as evidence that Yang is bisexual, as it's the only scene in the show where she shows interest in men. It can just as easily be read as Yang teasing RWBY, which then becomes a joke at John's expense, given he sleeps in a onesie. Either interpretation is valid, although I personally interpret Yang as a lesbian, and this scene was simply her teasing RWBY. Refocusing on RWBY, Yang asks what she's writing. It's a letter to the gang at Signal, who she promised to tell about Beacon. Like Yang's friends earlier this chapter, RWBY's friend group is never mentioned again. Sad as it may be, sometimes the friendships you make in childhood simply don't last. Yang teases her about it, prompting RWBY to throw a pillow into her face, expressing annoyance that Yang got to go to Beacon with her friends while RWBY didn't, and is alone. Where RWBY has made a friend in John, RWBY is still distraught that Weiss hates her. Yang tries to comfort her and encourage her, and in doing so, repeats what John said to RWBY earlier, that her friends are here, she just hasn't met them yet. The only thing keeping RWBY from making friends is her reluctance to talk to people. A shockingly loud candle is lit, drawing their attention to Blake, reading a book. When RWBY remarks that Blake saw what happened with Weiss, but left before RWBY could talk to her, Yang literally drags RWBY over to talk to her and make friends. Blake's leitmotif from Shadows begins and plays through the rest of the scene. It doesn't go very well at first. Blake resists talking to them, not even offering her name back when RWBY introduces herself properly. RWBY flounders, asking Yang for help. She manages to get Blake's name, but Blake is very visibly irritated by them. Which honestly is understandable, she's just trying to read. Yang also compliments Blake's bow, which of course points it out and serves as foreshadowing about what's under it. Yang tries again to make small talk, prompting Blake to pretty much just tell them to leave her alone and let her read, after which Yang tells RWBY that Blake is a lost cause. Their personalities simply don't match well. Yang is too extroverted and cheerful, and Blake too quiet and self-centered. They simply don't like each other at this point. Thankfully, RWBY finally tries actually talking to Blake about her book. Blake, at first, is a little taken aback, or self-conscious, but describes it as being about a man with two souls, each fighting for control over his body. If you actually read the text on the pages of the book, visible earlier, it is actually the real-world gothic horror classic Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This, of course, is an allegorical story about a man with two personalities, one good and upright and one evil and uninhibited, with a central theme of a voluntary choice becoming involuntary and of moral corruption. In the context of RWBY, this can be interpreted in two ways. The first and more straightforward interpretation is as foreshadowing of Ozpin's true nature. Given the usage of the word souls, this is a very clear-cut piece of foreshadowing, but given the core themes of the story, I would argue that it can also be symbolic of Adam, a character who over time gave in to violent and base desires, who Blake watched transform from someone she respected, admired, and loved into someone who takes joy in killing, which could be the exact reason that Blake is reading this book. Yang doesn't seem to find this appealing, but RWBY feels a connection to Blake, and the dialogue that follows is some of the most important in the first volume. both reinforcing the framing of the show in terms of fairy tales and stories, and expressing the core themes of it. She shares that she loves books, and that Yang would read fairy tales to her before bed. This serves as an example of how Yang acted as a mother figure to RWBY, caring for her when their father wasn't emotionally able to. She says that these stories are one of the reasons she wanted to be a huntress. Blake, cynical and disillusioned after what she's seen, laughs at RWBY a little, asking if she's
Hoping you'll live happily ever after?
RWBY isn't fazed. Again, she shows her passion and compassion, telling Blake that she wanted to be like those heroes, to help people who couldn't protect themselves, so that everyone can have a happily ever after. Blake clearly admires and respects RWBY for it, but her expression quickly becomes downcast, almost distressed. The next 2 lines are the core theme of the entire show.
Unfortunately, the real world isn't the same as a fairy tale.
Well, that's why we're here. To make it better.
If that's not hope core, I don't know what is. Thankfully, Yang is there to lighten the mood, attacking RWBY with her pride and affection. Blake, clearly feeling a little less hostile to these two, starts to thank them, when Weiss, again, comes to yell at them, this time for making a ruckus while she's trying to sleep. As they continue to bicker, with Yang and RWBY pointing out that Weiss has a problem with RWBY, despite RWBY only being nice to Weiss, Blake simply rolls her eyes and blows out the candle, ending the chapter. As she does, a few chords of gold play, which also serves as the credits music for this chapter. This song is an upbeat, loving song, about Yang caring for RWBY after the loss of Summer, a fitting song with how much of this chapter focused on the relationship between Yang and RWBY, and on that core theme of the show, of making things better even in the darkest times. Taken together, Chapter 2 served primarily to introduce the rest of Team RWBY, to show them at the very start of their journeys. All of them, in their own ways, struggle with connecting to others and with expressing their feelings, and, with the exception of RWBY and Yang, who this episode also devoted a lot of time to showcasing the connection between, none of them like each other very much. It also introduced Jean, and provided some more foreshadowing for Ozpin and further pieces of exposition and world building, while setting the tone further as comedic and lighthearted, with hints of something more emotional and earnest underneath. It's also one of the more visually rough chapters of the show, where the limited budget and experience show through the most, but I still think is perfectly watchable. Next time, I'll be analyzing Chapter 3, The First Step, Parts 1 and 2. Again, the delay may be a little longer, as they've officially run out of backlog, but don't worry, it's coming. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed and want to see more of this, consider subscribing, and remember, never stop moving forward.